want to properly appreciate the cultural setting of the wedding in Cana story? Well, then watch the film Wedding in Galilee. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Although this film is set in the modern-day occupied West Bank, Wedding in Galilee offers many valuable cultural scenarios for understanding Mediterranean weddings. Forget romance, folks. Fathers and mothers prearrange their children's marriages in the cultural world of the Gospels. These pre-selected partners commonly were relatives, ideally a first cousin if available. That's how it was for the patriarchs. At the wedding, most invited guests would also be relatives, but some non-relatives would also be included. Notice how in this story the unnamed mother and Jesus don't hesitate to interfere in this wedding to remedy the shortage of wine? This strongly suggests that Jesus and his unnamed mother were related to the wedding party. Honor was on the line. It would have been very shameful for non-relative guests to interfere in a wedding. The unnamed mother tells her son Jesus they have no wine. Jesus' response to his mother is fascinating. First, in this culture, it was respectful to address unrelated females as gunai, woman, but not your mother. This is extremely unusual. There is no parallel for this in any other ancient piece of literature, Hebrew or Greek. At this point, some escape the difficulty by way of allegory gone wild. They spiritualize the text away, looking for some special symbolism implied in Jesus calling his mother woman. But should we honestly read the text, then a better explanation emerges, one derived from a plausible Mediterranean cultural scenario. After birth, Israelite boys and girls were routinely brought up together exclusively by the women, the mother, the aunts, the sisters, grandmothers, so forth. This culture prized boys, not girls, so even peasant village boys were pampered and spoiled and pleasured by the women. This common Mediterranean practice extends centuries, well into Renaissance times. Get ready for a shock if you take some time to study Mediterranean artwork of the Madonna and Child. So strong is the relationship between mother and firstborn son in the circum-Mediterranean world that we in the West might think of it as codependent personality disorder. But even in the ancient Mediterranean, it was still smothering. Eventually, a rude awakening happened when Mediterranean boys hit puberty. They got dragged into the male world, kicking and screaming, cast out from Eden. And there were no rites of passage for this, no bar mitzvahs. These were not Jews. By 12 years old, the young Israelite man was inescapably inside the hierarchical and brutal world of fellow males. So that his masculine identity emerges, other Israelite males would punish the young man physically to great severity. He who loves his son will whip him often, and beat his ribs while he is young, or else he will become stubborn and disobey you. This is what the sage Jesus ben Sira advises Israelite fathers. You find the same in Proverbs and Hebrews. It colors what the mark in Jesus means when in Gethsemane he calls out to his patron, Abba. He wasn't talking American daddy, folks. Should American Christians raise their sons in this manner? The results will be disastrous: psychopathology and prison time. Haunted his whole life by gender ambiguity and striving to achieve hyper-ethno-masculinity, Mediterranean men like Jesus would attempt to weaken their strong emotional ties with females. There is no privacy in the Mediterranean world of the Gospels. Everyone's business is minding everyone else's business. So it is important that, in this very public society, in this very public celebration of a wedding, a Mediterranean man would seek to demonstrate his independence by rejecting the claims of all women upon him, including those of his mother. And this helps us properly understand the literal sense of, "What to me and to you, woman?" This phrase, literally translated, "What to me and to you?" is sometimes a response of someone who feels unjustly bothered by another. In other instances, the phrase is the answer of someone who refuses to get involved in the affairs of someone else. Considering ancient Mediterranean and Israelite child-rearing practices, one plausible cultural scenario for Jesus' statement to his mother is that Jesus, the adult son, felt unjustly bothered, perhaps even embarrassed by his mother's comment and implied suggestion that he'd get involved and fix the problem with the wine. So his reply would then be an attempt to put distance between himself and his mother, and to publicly declare his independence. Another equally plausible cultural scenario for Jesus' statement is that he did not want to interfere in something he believed that was none of their business. In the gospel called Luke, Jesus rejects the honorable invitation to be a mediator between two brothers, because he judged that the petitioner was motivated by greed rather than by justice denied. But Jesus gives in. Why does Jesus give in? Maybe Mediterranean maternal pressure was just too difficult for him to evade. Even in his adulthood, his Mediterranean mother's wish may have been inescapably Jesus' command. Or perhaps he was genuinely concerned about preserving family honor at a relative's wedding. The traces of Mediterranean culture embedded and hidden into segments of this Johannine story offer us beautiful insights into Jesus, the Mediterranean man, who the fourth gospel tells us early on pitched his tent among us. Jesus is just like us in so many human ways. You know, Jesus in the Gospel of John dawdles. He stalls. People ask him, come help. We need your help. My brother's dying. The one you love is dying. Yeah, I'm going to wait for 2 days.
When you know that ancient writers told stories as a means of getting across ideas, and they didn't tell stories to report to you the news of the day, again it raises the question, how do we know what is historical and what is not? These are in John and John alone. The prologue on "In the beginning was the Word," all of that. The wedding in Cana. Nicodemus' story. This guy coming to Jesus at night and asking all these... This dialogue goes on. The story of the woman at the well. Now, what's the matter? They didn't know that story? Or did they know it again and choose not to use it? All the I am sayings, I am the bread of life, I am the door, I am the resurrection and the life. All of those I am sayings that are in the Gospel of John, nowhere else in early Christian literature. Nowhere. So did Jesus say any of those, or are those the creation of early Christian preachers using Jesus' stories? Difficult to tell. It gets much more difficult. Remember the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery? That one is especially interesting. It's in the Gospel of John now. It almost certainly was not in the original Gospel of John. And it's in no other early Christian writing, and it's a great story. And when you look in the Gospel of John, it's very obvious that it's been inserted into the text because it breaks up the train of thought. So it's been rather clumsily inserted. And you can hypothesize that somebody read John and said, come on, bird brain, you can't leave that one out. It's too good a story. And stuck it in. Does that mean it's not from the historical Jesus? It may well be from the historical Jesus. And somebody thought it was too good a story to leave out, and so inserted it awkwardly in the Gospel of John, but nowhere else in all of early Christian literature. I am the light of the world. They don't know that. I'm the good shepherd. None of this. This is the bombshell. No other early Christian writing tells the story of the raising of Lazarus. Now think about that, folks. If that actually occurred as a historical event, can you imagine that word wouldn't spread like wildfire? And so why is it not in any other gospel? Not only the 4 in the New Testament, it's nowhere else in early Christian writing. Maybe it's a theological creation, not a historical event. And again, we got to try to figure out how are we going to tell the difference. Foot washing at the Last Supper, that one's puzzling too. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's about the sharing of bread and wine, right? They don't do that in John. It's a foot washing. We've sort of dumped the John version, and we follow the Matthew, Mark, and Luke versions. Does that mean John didn't know about the sharing of bread and wine? Does it mean that Matthew, Mark, and Luke never heard of the foot washing thing? But that doesn't appear in any other gospel. This stuff, not a single one of those stories appears in any other Christian literature.